The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The most shocking, stunning, insane trade in NBA history happens. It's absolutely the craziest NBA trade of all time. It is the craziest trade in Mavericks history for sure. And yeah, I called you because I am literally visiting a friend this weekend. I didn't bring any of my stuff with me, so this is not the normal recording. And I did not think that something this insane would happen. This is the only reason why I would be doing a show right now. And I was literally going to be gone for like 24 hours, basically. And here we are. But let's get into it. The Dallas Mavericks have traded Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris to the Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. This is a trade that fundamentally changes the entire outlook of the franchise of the Dallas Mavericks. This is a trade that sends the organization in a complete different other direction. This is a trade that completely alters everything that you're doing as a franchise, as a team, as an organization, as a city, as a fan base, as everything. I mean, Slovenian fans, we appreciated everything you guys did for this show, but I guess you're going on to Locked On Lakers now. It is wild, and it started with Shams just tweeting it out, breaking, the Mavericks have traded, blah, blah, blah. And you thought it was fake. I thought it was fake. So many people thought it was fake. You thought it was fake. I was talking to you, Isaac, on the phone. And then Shams tweeted, yes, this is real. Sources tell ESPN, blah, blah, blah. It dropped out of nowhere. And apparently it dropped out of nowhere to Luka, too.
Yeah, that's the biggest shock for me. You have a generational talent. When you are roster building in the league, in any sports league, you are trying to find your cornerstone generational talent. The Mavericks found that in 2018 when they drafted Luka Doncic, and he's had one of the best starts to any career that you've seen in an NBA as far as accolades, all the stuff. You've already went to an NBA Finals, 2 Western Conference Finals, and for you to pull the plug on a generational talent at the age of 25 is something you just don't see. I mean, organizations go decades looking for a guy like Luka. Guys don't get traded like Luka unless it is something later on in their career or it's a dramatic force out. And immediately when it was starting to sink in that this is real, I was like, then the Supermax was looming. Then this was something that Bill Duffy and Luka went to Nico and them and said, hey, like, thanks, but no thanks. And there was stuff behind the scenes that we just didn't know about. And of like, hey, and they were forcing their way out. We're not going to sign the Supermax. We'll ride this thing out till 2026 when the contract expires. But when Mark Stein, the most trusted, well-sourced Mavericks news person there is in the world, says that Luka did not know and Luka did not ask out. This is the ultimate. This is the ultimate. I mean, I'll just say this is not like this is probably not the most appropriate thing to say. This is the ultimate example of Nico Harrison pulling out his thing and laying it on the table and saying, "I'm in charge." And buddy, but like you are in charge, but man, I mean, does Nico like go to the grocery for 2 weeks in Dallas? Like,
I sitting here having collected my thoughts for, I don't know, 6 minutes. I cannot believe that Nico Harrison would be this stupid. I can't. Like, I cannot believe that he would trade Luka, whatever else, for Anthony Davis, who's going to be 32 in a couple of weeks, has had a history of injuries, to pair with Kyrie, who is 32, 33, has a history of injuries, Klay Thompson, and whatever they have right now, Lively with a history of injuries and all that. Plus, they only get one first-round pick. They get one kind of young, interesting player in Max Christie. I cannot believe Nico Harrison to be that dumb. That is the worst trade in NBA history, if you look at it, right? And so you start looking through some of the reasons, and McMahon tweeted the first one. Tim McMahon of ESPN said the Mavs had major concerns about moving forward with Luka Doncic due to his constant conditioning issues and looming commitment of another Supermax contract extension. The contract extension is a moot point. Everyone gets that deal. You have to play within the rules of the NBA. Just because a player is going to get the most money ever, you have to play that game. You have to pay that guy that money. That is the player that, like Isaac said, you look for decades. The Wizards are going to be bad for a decade to try and find someone remotely as close to that player, to Luka Doncic. And they won't find one because that type of player only comes around once every 10, 12 years. A Zion came and he didn't hit the mark. Wembanyama has come now, like 7 or 8 years after Luka, and we don't know if he's going to hit the mark, right? It does not happen this often. And then the other quote from Nico Harrison that's going on right now, as far as some kind of reason for this trade, he said, "I believe that defense wins championships. I believe that getting an all-defensive center and an all-NBA player with a defensive mindset gives us a better chance. We're built to win now and in the future." That's not good enough. I cannot believe that would be the reason. There has to be something else. They have to know his left leg that he's been dealing with issues for over a year is completely cooked. They have to know something. But even if his leg is cooked, they just went to the finals last year and still made it happen. I cannot believe Nico Harrison to be this stupid and this dumb that there has to be some other reason. That's where I land.
Listen, we'll talk about Anthony Davis in a little bit.
Tomorrow. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Let's talk about Luka right now. And this is insane.
Yeah. I mean, we've been criticized, especially this year, probably the most from like Mavs fans in one single season about talking about Luka that we have so far, because there is no, and I mean, God, it just feels so weird saying like Mavs fans, but it's like it's no surprise that there is frustration across the board that Luka has not stayed in shape. All right.
Hey, breaking news. Anthony Davis waived his trade kicker. Just wanted to let you.
Thanks, AD. And you know, that has been a never-ending thing for years now, seasons now, off seasons now, of Luka coming into shape, coming into the season out of shape and all the stuff. That has been a frustrating thing, a tension thing. No, I'm just saying, I'm saying he's obviously, like, that is the source thing that you just read from McMahon.
It's not a good enough reason.
It's not a good enough reason at all. But I'm just saying, like, that has been, it's not like that is a surprising report. That has been known. No. And I think it's been a little bit more frustrating behind the scenes than what has been reported, of just how frustrating it has been seeing, hey, there's potential up here. We've talked about on the show before, like, do you want to be an all-time top 10 guy, or do you want to be like just an all-time great type of guy? And I know, because that's how good he is. Like, he is an all-time great guy. That's the difference.
That's the difference. You don't trade an all-time great guy.
He's already an NBA, in a basketball Hall of Famer. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame, maybe wearing a Lakers jersey in the Hall of Fame. And guys, I hate the Lakers. I hate them with every bone in my body. And the fact that I got to see Dorian Finney-Smith and Luka Doncic wear Lakers jerseys now, I feel like I'm just in hell. Like, this is just like, I believe in my Lord and Savior, and I believe that I'm going to be in heaven. But man, if there is an idea of what hell looks like, it is this. And there's so many frustrating angles. I mean, we're talking, for people outside of Dallas, like, Luka's on billboards. Luka's on, like, there's so much stuff. There's so much people like legitimately asking, how do I tell my kids this? Like, I'm like, my son doesn't know a ton about the Mavs so far. He's 5. He's 6, but it's just like, I gotta like tell him, like, Luka's not on the team anymore.
Isaac's so flabbergasted he forgot the age of his son.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's just icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
The Lakers have traded Anthony Davis in exchange for Luka Doncic.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
This is, I'm not going to say like one of the most stunning trades in NBA history that I can think of, in like sports that I can think. We're obviously, this has happened, 20 minutes or a half hour ago. So a lot of details still emerging, which we will talk about as we get going here. We'll for days, but this was such a big deal, Andy, this trade. Again, Lakers moving AD and Christie and a 2029 first round pick to Dallas. Jalen Hood-Schifino goes to Utah, along with, I believe, a couple of the Lakers second round picks for next year. I think those were Lakers picks that went out the door there in exchange. And the Lakers get Maxi Kleber and Markieff Morris in addition to Luka.
Former Lakers champion Markieff Morris, who, it should be noted, the Lakers have not won an effing championship.
Right, it's true.
Since Markieff Morris left. Like, this is how big of a surprise this was. I mean, like, it's obviously seismic by definition. Part of the reason that it took us, maybe 20 to 30 minutes to go live is we were checking the living bleep out of this just to make sure that this wasn't like some massively orchestrated hack across NBA Twitter that basically everybody other than us was getting hacked on our Twitter accounts because apparently we're not important.
We're just not big. First of all, we'd like to welcome all of our new Slovenian followers to the show. I'm Brian. He's Andy. I basically needed to see it on TV. I was like, we're not starting a show until someone talks about this on television. And then, of course, they did, and Shams at ESPN breaking the story, but like everybody was worried about exactly the same thing. What's your first reaction to this in terms of, just whatever, like, what was your first reaction to this?
Once we were convinced that it was actually real?
Once we knew it was real, yes.
Who initiated it? I wanted to know how this came about, because when I say that this took everybody by surprise, I mean this took everyone by surprise. Like, we have text threads with people at 710 ESPN, where Brian and I both appear regularly. We're part of the Locked On Network, NBA channel thread. There is no inkling, you see Tim McMahon and Brian Windhorst talking about it on ESPN right now. Like, nobody seemed to have the slightest indication that this was coming at all. So then it's starting to be reported that this was something that Dallas approached the Lakers about. I got to be honest, my first concern, or my immediate reaction, although I guess I'm giving it away when I say concern, is, what do the Mavericks know? Because you don't trade MVP caliber players just entering their prime.
Caliber players, MVP winners.
Luka's never won MVP.
Not one, but correct. I'm sorry, but like,
he's an NBA. He's an MVP caliber player just entering his prime. Like, he will be 26 in February. the biggest star they've had since Dirk Nowitzki, and by all accounts, they had been seemingly setting up for him to be the face of this franchise. My immediate reaction is, what does Dallas know? Like, what would lead Dallas to do this? Like, if the Lakers had approached Dallas about it first, that would at least follow a certain logic you'd expect. Looking for the younger player. Anthony Davis is a better two-way player than Luka Doncic, but Luka is considered across NBA punditry, I think NBA circles, the better overall player, and he's 6 years, 5 to 6 years younger
Luka's
than
25.
AD. Right. So it would feel more predictable if the Lakers had approached Dallas about this. That Dallas approached the Lakers, I can't lie, even with Luka's incredible talent, my immediate reaction was, what do they know and why?
Well, what they said, and this is the reporting from Tim, who is as dialed into the Mavericks as any human being can be. This is about them having, and Nico Harrison essentially said as much. This is about them believing that Luka is not reliable. That the Mavericks, the Lakers are going to have to pay Luka a lot, and they will, but they'll give him a regular max. The Mavericks were in. And Brian Windhorst broke this down really well on ESPN, so I need to make sure I'm crediting the people here. $350 million, 5-year, $350 million is what was coming to Luka, and they did not believe he was reliable enough to give him that contract. That is, by trading him, you are saying we do not believe that you are worth, back of the envelope math there. That's what, $75 million a year?
70.
70
if
million.
It's 5 and 350, that's 70 mil.
Okay. It's a lot.
Yes.
And so I apologize. It's like, I don't have this information from me because I wasn't prepared to look it up. This is a number that the Lakers are, not going to have to hit that supermax number. They're just going to pay them a ton of money, and they will. And so it makes me, I will say, we'll do this part first. It absolutely makes me nervous that Dallas was like, we don't want to do this. Hey, and apparently this all came together very quickly. What do you think? Luka, bad defensive player, skinny fat, as we saw the comment earlier, has a real conditioning issue, and that has been. This is not a secret.
No.
Okay.
It's very open.
So,
it's a very open secret, and
it's not an open. It's not. The Mavs have been leaning
right.
on him to get in shape and really get in like real shape for a long time. Now, so that's the part that concerns me.
I'll tell you really quickly what also concerns me. The Lakers' future willingness to make Luka do these sorts of things.
Sure, and we'll get to this in like what it means now versus what it means in the future. So we'll get to all this in a second. But like, here's the part that you look at and you say, okay, but some risk there. Luka Doncic is, arguably the second best player in the world. Like,
he's up there. He is up there.
He is stunningly good
yes.
at basketball in terms of the numbers that he puts up and the types of stuff that he does. I'm just bringing up the numbers here again. We're popping around so many things. I was not prepared.
Our heads are spinning, people.
Yeah, and so like going, I'm not totally sure that I'm going to be able to do this without, saying something that's going to get us in trouble with the network. He won Rookie of the Year in his first season, finished 4th in MVP second season, 6th in his third season, 5th in his 4th season, 8th in his next season. Last season, he was 3rd and would have probably been, this year, had he not missed some games, would be somewhere higher in there. Or, right up there as an MVP candidate before he got hurt. He averages for his career. This year, he's averaging 34 points a game with 9 rebounds and a little over 9 rebounds and 9.8 assists. That's a triple-double every night with 30 points a game. He's 25 years old.
28. I'm seeing 28.
I'm sorry,
8 and 8.
I'm taking points per game. I'm sorry, that was last year. Averaged 34.
Right.
Last year,
28, 8 and 8.
Right. Last year, he averaged 34, 9, and almost 10. This year, he's averaging 28, 8, and 8, basically. That's remarkable production. And, as a 25, like if he stays in shape, if he takes care of his body, if he does like the Lakers went backwards with in their sort of generational clock, got a 25-year-old that you can now build stuff around and can go forward with this guy knowing he's your centerpiece. Is there risk? Sure. Do you get a chance to get a 25-year-old all NBA performer most days of the week? You do not. The next part of this that is a consideration, because we did a post-game show for this Knicks game. One of the things we talked about, Andy, was, man, the Lakers are 9 games over 500. They're looking pretty good. Like, what are they this year? This trade blows all of that up because, to me at least, particularly when you trade Christie and AD out the door, this is not a trade that makes you better now. The Lakers have opened up holes for themselves defensively that are going to be really hard to fill. And while they've gotten better offensively, assuming Luka, I think Luka and AD injury-wise are both on basically the same timeline for when they would come back. I don't think this helps them this year unless Pelinka's got more still to come, because the Lakers really need a center now. If they needed a center at 2:00 this afternoon, they desperately need one now.
It finally happened. De'Aaron Fox is now a Spur.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast.
So it just happened, everybody. Spurs, Kings. Yep, they got a deal done. It's a layered thing, but basically the bulk of it is the only thing you care about right now is, yes, De'Aaron Fox is a Spur. They now have a running mate for Victor Wembanyama, but the perfect running mate. Scoring guard, just entering his prime, double-figure scorer, wanted to come to San Antonio, according to reports. I'm pretty sure he might say that when he gets introduced to the San Antonio press later on. But nevertheless, what a good time to be a Spurs fan. Jack, you have been the one that's been the most vocal, the most hyped about this. Not to say James wasn't, but there was one guy that fell out of the seat. It was you when it happened. Your first reaction.
Dude, man, I thought I was having a heart attack. Honestly, thought I was having a heart attack. I couldn't believe. Oh man, we got our other star, man. It's been saying it. He wants to be here. Go get him. Price doesn't matter, and I guess the price didn't matter to Sacramento because
I guess not.
My goodness, what a fleece job that was.
That was.
We didn't give up any of our players, either of the ATO picks. And we got rid of Zach Collins.
So, to give the details of what happened, as Jack's kind of putting pieces around. No Keldon going away, no Devin going away, no Jeremy going away, no Atlanta picks going away. You are getting De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin. The Kings in this 3-team deal are going to get Zach LaVine, Sidi Sissoko, 3 first-round picks. Those picks are the 2025 Charlotte pick that you own. You're owned in 2027 because it can't happen in consecutive years. And remember when everybody was really mad that we traded chance to draft Rob Dillingham for that 2031 Minnesota pick that was unprotected, or top 2 protected, I think it was? Well, we got that. We sent that pick and got De'Aaron Fox. They also sent 3 second-round picks. Chicago's in 25, Denver's in 28, and their own, not their own, but Sacramento's own back to them in 2028. Yeah. The Bulls are getting Zach Collins, pure salary dump move, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and their own 2025 pick back from San Antonio this year. And awesome. I speculated that, if Chicago's in this, maybe they're getting their pick back. And
one of the things that I think Spurs fans will be very happy about, I know I am, and I know you two guys are, is no Steph Castle. Steph Castle stayed a Spur. That early reports that was a major sticking point with the Kings moving forward. Castle supposedly had to be in the deal. He is still a Spur. Way to go, Spurs GM Brandon Wright. This was a complete fleece job. I think.
Can we finally give him credit?
I've been giving him credit on this show. I really have. I have.
No, but if you pay attention, a lot of Spurs fans have been very upset with Brian Wright.
Oh, yeah.
And even on draft day, when they traded that Dillingham pick away to Minnesota, everybody was very upset because a lot of fans have fallen in love with the idea of Rob Dillingham becoming a Spur at some point. And now we see the fruits of his labors and stacking, and you get a De'Aaron Fox, a proven entity in this league that has made all NBA team, that is an all-star, and that can be Victor Wembanyama's running mate for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Obviously, I think Spurs fans should be, and they better be happy about this deal. Again, the Spurs didn't do any major damage to the roster. Sad to see a guy like Trey Jones go, really solid guy, but I think he'll do well in Chicago. Hey, I'm trying to be nice here, James. Trying to be nice here.
It was so sad to see City leave.
So sad to see Zach Collins. City leave. I'm just kidding. But nevertheless, Jack, I want to start off with you. First of all, let's talk about the impact of this. Let's talk about the immediate impact. Let's talk about starting lineup. Where does Fox slot in? Because something's gonna have to give, and then looking at CP3 right now.
Yeah, for me, the starters are easily Fox, Castle, Devin, Harrison, and Wemby. It's
easy. What about you?
You gotta start letting those two play with each other, Fox and Castle.
And Wemby too. To get all three of those guys getting used to each other.
I mean, your best lineup is Wemby and Castle together on the floor.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they may ease things in with that because I still see Chris Paul starting for some reason. At least right now, maybe Castle supplants him in the future.
Sure.
And I'm not saying it's the lineup I would want. I'm just saying, knowing the Spurs, knowing how adverse they've been to even starting Castle this year, period. Like there was a stretch in time where we were like, why aren't they starting Steph Castle?
Yeah, and you saw how bad his numbers got. Chris Paul can come off the bench with no problem. It won't affect him whatsoever. We see the jump in numbers with Castle starting or off the bench.
I'm not disagreeing that he should be, or there's not a reasoning behind why he should be as well. I just know that there are a ton of potential still lingering things that the Spurs do that infuriate a lot of us, fans, media, etc., to where they are loyal. And they've made it almost feels like some promises were made when they signed Chris Paul about his role with this team.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at the deal though, James, and again, a fleece job. If this was the package, if this was the package that it took to get De'Aaron Fox, as of now, unless more details comes out, but according to the details that have been released, the Spurs clearly won this trade. They won it. Completely. Not even close. They got over on Sacramento. Chicago was just there. Chicago, just was a filler. But if you're looking at the main two teams, it's the Spurs. They won over. And look, Sacramento got what they needed to. They wanted according to reports, a win now player, a proven commodity, and they got that with Levine. They got that. So they got satisfied. But in the overall scheme, San Antonio won this deal hands down. Let's go back to Chris Paul, though. If he starts, and if you're going to go forward with that lineup, Jack, and you talked about the numbers for Castle, how they take a hit when he's off the bench, do you perhaps foresee the Spurs maybe tell CP3, hey, do you want to go elsewhere? We've seen the Spurs do this. LMA, DeMar DeRozan, the list goes on and on. Letting the veterans go. Yep. I can see that happening.
Without a doubt, this is not over. The fact that we kept our young core, both the Atlanta picks, this is not over. I foresee the Spurs making another move within the next 4 days because we still have glaring holes. We can't have Jeremy Sohan being our backup center anymore. It's a travesty to watch. So this is not over. We still need pieces, and I think that there are Spurs players that will continue to be on the move this week.
James, it's almost like a match made in heaven. Fox in San Antonio. Everybody knows about the links that he has to San Antonio, his wife, the links to Texas, grew up near Houston, is an openly admitted he had his favorite player is Manu Ginobili, admitted that he went to the San Antonio Spurs games during the height of the Tim Duncan era. Yeah, and of course, just fits exactly what this team needs moving forward. But the rebuild, how much of a jump start, or at least maybe I should say next level, does this take the rebuild to? Like hyperspace, like we're talking about hyperdrive, like Punch It Chewie and the Falcon, hit it, or we still need work to do?
It depends where they go from here between now and the trade deadline. Because this team still has very obvious glaring holes. Yeah. You need floor spacing. You don't have good floor spacers on this team. Devin Vassell was 1 for 10 the other night from against Miami. So, like, your best floor spacer is Julian Champagnie for whatever reason. And that's just not good enough in the NBA. You got to surround Wemby with competent floor spacers that open it up for De'Aaron Fox to be able to attack the paint like that. You also need a big that can help protect Wemby, because we saw with Zubac and we've seen it with Sengun before and other players. Like, they will take him down to the paint and they will get physical with him. Mm-hmm. And we've seen, and this isn't a knock on Wemby. He put on 14 pounds of muscle this offseason. It's a process to put weight on a player of that size without doing detrimental harm that can cause injury to their feet and lower extremities. So you have to do it. You have to do it meticulously and with a plan. And they're doing that. And he's doing a great job. And he's put on a lot of strength. Mm-hmm. But Giannis didn't turn into Giannis overnight. He was a skinny guy when he came into the league too. And it took him about 5 years before he looked like the Greek freak, right? Yeah, so it's going to take time for this to develop. But until then, you got to get some protection for Wemby down low. You've got to go get a competent NBA big, because right now, especially with Zach Collins out the door, you've got
Fassi,
Mamu, Fassi, and Zohan are your bigs, and that's not good enough.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. How about a Broadway show? Can't wait to take my kids to Broadway. The energy, the excitement, it's unforgettable. Seeing live performers, it's the best. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Kentucky basketball came into their game of the year, and they just clearly did not want it more.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
The Cats have lost to a team that just simply wanted it more. It's a shooting performance from the Arkansas Razorbacks that, quite frankly, I did not expect coming. I don't think nobody in Arkansas, nobody in Kentucky would have expected the shooting performance that Arkansas has had tonight to come to fruition. And sure enough, it certainly has. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you're watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Again, appreciate you guys in the live chat for tuning in. This is a game where Kentucky was down both their starting and backup point guards, and you can talk about how much of an important aspect of this game that could be, especially considering the way that DJ Wagner played tonight for Arkansas, but it really comes down to two different things for me. And it comes down to Arkansas wanting the game more. They wanted to win this game more than Kentucky did. And then on top of that, you also had some very poor officiating. And this is something I've continued to harp about. I know it's right here on the screen. I'm not going to dive too much into it other than two different things. Number one, officiating in college basketball has been incredibly inconsistent this entire season. Yes, we kind of hashed this out during the Georgia game. We won't do it again here. Second thing is Arkansas had 16 fouls with 12 minutes left. You got down to the 4-minute timeout, and you had 17 fouls if you were the Hogs. And gentlemen, that's just part of the story. Is it what decided the game? Absolutely not. Arkansas came in here and shot incredibly well in this contest, but again, it's just simply a game that I don't think Arkansas will have ever again. I'm still sitting here kind of stunned that this is where we're at. Like, this is the reality, is that Kentucky came in here. I'm just closing out the tab that I had watching the game. This is a game that Kentucky came in with, I think, just about every single metric on their side in terms of what you're looking at on KenPom, what you're looking at on Evan Mia. On paper, this is a team that Kentucky should have beaten by what the Vegas line said, somewhere between 10 to 15 points. This is an Arkansas team that has shot so poorly this season that you didn't expect for them to come in and rattle off 13 threes, 13 of 25 there for the game. Kentucky shot 43.5% themselves, 10 of 23 from beyond the arc, at least so far, with 1:06 left in the game. But that's just kind of how this one went. Again, I appreciate you guys tuning in the live chat. If you've got any comments on this game, would love for you to sound off. This is one that kind of stings. It does not look like in that first half, and frankly, at various points in the second, that Kentucky came to play like at all. They did not go out there and compete physically. They did not go out there and fight. They had some really bad shot selection. If you want to talk about coaching, this may be Mark Pope's worst game of the year in terms of rotations and lineups. They were incredibly baffling. One of you just mentioned it in the live chat, and I'll say it here. Run some zone against Calipari and a team that does not shoot the ball well, and yet they just simply refused to do it. An incredibly upsetting and disappointing performance for the Cats. Somebody else here in the chat, Josh, says Amari and Robinson were the only ones who showed up, and it does kind of feel like that Amari was the guy here, at least in the preview episode that I said, hey, he was the X factor for Kentucky, and he came in, played very, very well. He has 20 points, 11 rebounds, he has 3 assists, 3 turnovers as well, but a steal, and he played really well in 24 minutes. In fact, I'm looking here. He's the only Wildcat that's positive in plus-minus box score here. Jax was minus 11 despite having 20 points, shooting 6 of 9 from the floor. He had 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers. I thought both of them played well. And this is something that Evan Mia talked about recently, and I don't want to get on him too hard, but Otega Owe, when he is on the floor, according to analytics, Kentucky doesn't play that well, at least especially on the defensive end. And as of late, they've been playing worse. And in this game, you see him go 4 of 12 for 8 points, 2 rebounds, minus 18 in 31 minutes of play. That's the worst here out of the entire rotation that played tonight. You have to figure out what you're doing with your rotations. If Lamont Butler's going to be out long-term, maybe you start looking elsewhere outside of, frankly, somebody like Colin Chandler or Travis Perry, who have simply just not provided enough. I know they got on the floor tonight and they were able to contribute in a couple of different ways, but Travis is just, I don't think he's the long-term answer for you, at least this season. I mean long-term, like to finish out the season. And then you look at a guy like Colin Chandler, who played 17 minutes tonight. I don't quite understand why. And if you want to say, well, Kobe doesn't play defense, Kobe finished with a better plus-minus. Despite going 2 of 8, he still finished with, I think, actually, third best plus-minus on the team tonight. He was apparently the third best player on the floor in 28 minutes, despite going 2 of 8, 1 of 6 from 3. Look, if you also want to get pretty simple here, if you want to talk about kind of, where this fell apart for Kentucky, you can also look to the second half shooting. Kentucky went 3 of 13 from beyond the arc. Arkansas only shot 7 threes, but they made 4 of them. It's for Kentucky, man. Mark Pope has talked a lot about it's about volume, not efficiency. And, you kind of throw that out of the window whenever you just simply cannot stop another team from scoring on slower possessions. It's just, you have to be more efficient. It's not about chucking up more threes. It's about making the open ones that you get, man. So this one, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Game's not even over yet. Kentucky is now down 89-79 with 17 seconds left. Apparently, they've made their last 3 shots, but it doesn't matter as they have just simply not been able to stay in front of Janelle Davis, Adu Thiero, DJ Wagner, 3 players who just went out of their minds, just played ballistic here tonight. You didn't expect it, and there it goes. It is officially gone final. 89-79. Again, I appreciate you guys in the live chat. Just continue to sound off. Let me know what you think about this game. If you want to spin this positively, which I'll probably say this later on in the show, and a lot of Arkansas fans will probably see this. If anybody wants to clip this, you know what? Go ahead. I frankly don't really care. The Hogs, I don't foresee them having another shooting performance like that again. These kids that are currently on this roster could be playing well after college with each other, whether it be in the NBA, whether it be pickup, whether it be overseas. It doesn't really matter. They're never going to have a game like this again. And I respect that. There is a respect to that because what it means is they got up for this game and they wanted to win. This is a roster coming into the season that a lot of people had high hopes in. When they beat Kansas in an exhibition game earlier this year, a lot of people got really excited, as they should have. This is a talented, on paper, talented Arkansas group, but they've fought through injuries. They've kind of been shorthanded, and here they are now in a game where their backs are against the wall. This is what Cal has done so well, especially during his time at Kentucky. They fight and they win one that they frankly shouldn't. It's the one game a year where you pull out of it and you go, how on earth did Coach Cal win that? And yet they find a way to do it here. We're live on YouTube. If you're listening on the postcast, appreciate you tuning in and wherever you're tuned in. Hey, subscribe to the show. We are so close to 15,000 subscribers. I appreciate every single one of you who are in here. 89-79 is the final score. The loss here.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's just icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
You are Locked On Balls, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers.
A 20-point drubbing, 64-44, shorthanded, 7 scholarship players. Zakai Ziegler didn't play. Igor Milicic didn't play. Of course, Tennessee's already shorthanded. First and foremost, Grant, thanks for joining the show. Was this the most impressive win of the Rick Barnes era? Rick Barnes, he had a lot of great things to say about this win post-game, but I want your opinion. Maybe not the best win, but was this the most impressive?
No, the best win I think was at Creighton. Against Creighton in the NCAA tournament last year. Because since they had been to the Sweet 16 a few times under Rick, they really needed to win that game. They really need to get back to the Elite Eight for just the second time in program history. They went to Alabama and won. They've won a lot in Rupp under Rick. So there's a lot of other wins that kind of stack up against this one. This one might be the most impressive response, most impressive situation that they overcome, adversity just in terms of who they are missing in Zakai Ziegler and Igor Milicic and how much they rely on those guys, what those guys do game in and game out. And not only that, the last 2 weeks. I mean, 3 losses the last 4 games. This team started 14-0. They were ranked number 1 for 5 weeks in a row. Like, they needed some kind of response. They needed some kind of statement. And they got one at home against a team that had beat them by 30 3 weeks ago in Gainesville. So it was as impressive of a performance and an answer, I guess, to a really tough situation that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, that's just another layer to this game I didn't even mention. I mean, Tennessee fell first loss of the season, and boy, did they make it count. 30-point loss on the road to Florida. back on January the 7th, is towards the first of the new year. And the response from that game, and of course everything that's happened, Tennessee loses a 3 of 4. It felt like Rick Barnes, I don't want to say he was snippy or anything, but it's kind of like he was getting tired of the questions at the media availability on Friday. You were there. Tell me about it. You guys essentially saying, hey, how's the temperature of the locker room? Things aren't great. And his response was kind of like, guys, I mean, I've done this forever. Like, we're good. We're good. And certainly they look good on Saturday.
That kind of started on Tuesday night in his post game after Kentucky, when we kind of just kept pestering with questions that he wasn't really wanting to keep answering. At one point, he said, "Look, we've lost 4 games. We're not that bad of a basketball team. We're not in that bad of a place." He said, "We've lost 4 games against 4 good teams." All that stuff. And then Friday, it was like, "What's this team need to do to see some shots go down? How badly does this team need to see shots go in early in the game? How does this team score it better? Like, what do you do when people are daring you to shoot threes, but you don't want to just sit there and jack up threes all the time?" Like, and at some point it was like, enough's enough. Like, he was tired of this line of questioning. It was, again, like, we've lost 4 games against 4 teams that were ranked at one point in time. They're all good basketball teams. That was he's usually joking in a good mood. He was a little bit aggravated. He's a little bit tired. I think those 2 weeks had worn on everybody. And I think you saw a little bit of a kind of a release valve against Florida with the way they played to kind of take some of that frustration out on an opponent and play a lot better at home in front of their home crowd, in front of a great atmosphere Saturday, opposed to how they kind of let down on Tuesday.
What was the turning point of the game? Because to me, again, I was actually over there watching baseball at the time, and I had an earbud in, and I was listening to Bob and Bert and the Ball Radio Network. And to me, not watching but listening to the game, it certainly felt like the run there to begin the second half. What was it, 9-0? And Tennessee jumped up to 10 just right out of the gate there. I could hear the crowd. It certainly felt like that place was bumping. Was the run there to begin the second half kind of like, okay, Tennessee's got control of this game, and then not only does Tennessee have control of this game, but Tennessee's on its way to just demolishing the Gators?
Let's quote Bryn Hubbs and talk about the middle 8 and how important that final 4 minutes is to close the first half, and how important that first 4 minutes is to start the second half.
Yeah.
Tennessee kept hanging around. Florida led for, I think, 14 minutes in the first half, almost 14 minutes, something like that. But there was one sequence, one possession where I think it was Darlington Dubar got a block under the rim. Florida got the loose ball. Florida went back to the rim. Cade Phillips blocked the second shot. Then Jemai Meshack corrals the loose ball. He outlets to Chaz Lanier, who hits a pull-up 3 in transition, which is you got to have some guts to take that shot, especially a guy that's been missing shots as badly as he had the last couple times out. That put them up 21-20, something like that. I think that gave them the lead for the first time, and they didn't trail after that. They closed the half really well in the final 3 minutes, and then they started the second half with a really quick 6-0 run, forced a Florida timeout. It wasn't anything crazy, too. It's like a baseline cut, a post feed, a mid-range jumper. Like, it was good offense, and Florida called a timeout. And I think Florida got a 3-point play out of that timeout, and that was a little bit of momentum for them. But after that, it was like, Tennessee was up 10 in a matter of minutes, and then not long after that, it felt like it was 20, then 21, and it got out of hand that quickly because of that transition there to close the first half to start the second half. And that was all the home crowd needed to kind of help put this team away. And the way that Tennessee was playing on defense, man, that 10-point lead felt like a 30-point lead.
Leading into the game, and I'll get to the status of Zakai Ziegler and Igor Milicic here in a moment, but kind of once we got the news that those guys were out, Tennessee was down to 7 scholarship players. Your lineup was going to was it going to be Boswell? Were they going to move Gainey to the points? D Stone's going to be in there. Like, I was texting one of my buddies, and I'm like, Tennessee is going to get absolutely waxed unless Chaz Lanier goes off. And I don't feel like I was alone in that thought. I saw plenty of tweets saying, come on, guys, let's give it our best effort. In parentheses, I don't think Tennessee is going to win. It's like, but in typical Rick Barnes fashion, backs against the wall, man, Tennessee just comes out. But it was so much more than Chaz Lanier. Chaz Lanier was great, made 5 3-pointers, had 19 points. And that was a game high, but Tennessee, won the turnover battle 7-13. Tennessee dominated points in the paint 34-14. It was just so much more than one guy, and I thought what Jordan Gainey did was super impressive, shifting over to the 1, scoring 16. Wasn't great from behind the arc, but found ways to impact the game in other ways. And, of course, Jemai Meshack was who Jemai Meshack is. Starting probably one of the best highlight reels of Saturday, the turnover steal, Cade Phillips to somebody, back to Phillips with the slam. That was incredible.
If you look at the box score, it's basically the exact opposite of what happened in Gainesville. Points in the paint, turnovers, points off turnovers, second chance points, rebounding, all that stuff. It almost is completely opposite of how that game played out. in Gainesville. And I was texting people as well Saturday morning when I was headed to the arena, because it felt like in those situations, you either find a way to rally and you win by 15, 20 points, or you get beat by 30, you get beat by 40, and it's just demoralizing and awful. And I don't know what it is about Jordan Gainey when there's no Zakai Ziegler available. You go back to Illinois in December, Zakai picks up his third and fourth foul in the same possession with 18 minutes left in the game, and he has to go to the bench. And Gainey takes over, and he takes over that game. He scores 18 points over the next 18 minutes. He didn't commit any turnovers. He was just in control. He's, poised. He makes that shot, obviously, at the rim to win the game as time expires, that contested layup after driving coast to coast. He was just as impressive yesterday. The stuff that he did, how poised he was, how in control he was, how he was getting everybody involved. What you're talking about, everybody doing a little bit of something, it feels like there's crooked numbers all over that box score, with assists, with rebounds, with blocks, with points. It felt like they only had 7 guys available, but all 7 guys were doing something. I don't think Bishop Boswell was the only guy that didn't score, but he played well. He played more minutes than he has in a long time, and he handled himself well. He was the guy who Jemiah saved it to Cade. Cade outletted it to Bishop. Bishop threw it right back to Cade. There wasn't a single dribble on that play, that huge dunk. That was another huge moment in the second half. And that was kind of it in a nutshell. That was a hustle play by Jemiah to tip that ball, to save it. And then it was heads up to get it to Cade, to get it forward to Bishop, to get it back to Cade. That was just kind of, in a nutshell, everybody doing what they had to do to win that basketball game.
Yeah, it was awesome for sure. I've seen that replay everywhere on social media since the end of the game. Out the door here, of course, you got Mizzou coming up this week on a Wednesday night, going to Oklahoma. Status of Igor, who I believe is just sick, and then what did Rick Barnes have to say about Zakai Ziegler and his availability moving forward?
Igor missed practice Friday because he was dealing with that illness, and he was actually removed from the injury report Saturday morning. So he was available to play technically up until pregame, and he was in the back getting fluids, and he wanted to play. He wanted to try to go, but they just ended up rolling him out not long before the national anthem and the intros and all that stuff, because he never came out to the floor for warm-ups with his teammates. With Zakai, he had an MRI Friday night, no structural damage shown in the MRI, according to Rick Barnes. Which makes sense because he went back in the game to start second half against Kentucky Tuesday night, and he never came off the floor. He played all 20 minutes in the second half. And I'm not sure if that's something where maybe when the adrenaline wears off, maybe when all that stuff and you kind of settle down, your body, you don't move around as much after a game, you kind of relax a little bit. Maybe it stiffens up, maybe it gets sore, maybe it feels a little bit differently than it did in that moment. Like when he got hurt, he didn't get carried off the floor. He jumped up and kind of did this kind of jog/hobble towards the Tennessee bench and straight into the locker room. So at some point, I guess it became sore. At some point, it became an issue. I don't know kind of what the update's going to be. We'll talk to Rick Tuesday before Missouri comes here on Wednesday. And, man, the SEC schedule, I'll tell you what, it does not let up, because Missouri has won 6 out of 7. They just went to Mississippi State and won by 27 against their ranked Mississippi State team. It's tough to win in Starkville when the building's full and when that's a good basketball team. State's kind of reeling right now, and then you look at Saturday, they go to Oklahoma. All Oklahoma did was get down by 13 in the first half against Vanderbilt on Saturday and came back and won by 30. They outscored Vanderbilt close to 40 points in the second half. And Oklahoma's the team that started, I think, 14-0 as well. So there are no days off. There's no breathers in the SEC. Like Tennessee had a huge response against Florida. Now you better have another response ready for Missouri Wednesday night.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. How about a Broadway show? Can't wait to take my kids to Broadway. The energy, the excitement, it's unforgettable. Seeing live performers, it's the best. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Pete Carroll continues to put together his coaching staff.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast.
We found out Sunday evening, right, as we're putting this all together, we're putting the whole little setup that we have. As you can see, our background in the back. we see from Adam Schefter back to the NFL. Former Eagle head coach Chip Kelly is being hired as the Raiders offensive coordinator per me and Pete Thamel. And I immediately said, whoa.
Yeah,
that is big. Everyone assumed that Darrell Bevell was going to be the guy. Everyone assumed, oh, Pete Carroll's going to go back and hire all his Seahawk buddies. This is not a Seahawk buddy. Chip Kelly's a big deal.
Yeah, and Darrell Bevell was my offensive coordinator, and a good dude, but not somebody that's going to necessarily move the needle.
Right.
Chip Kelly is that dude. He is a national champion. He has experience as a head coach at the college level, a coordinator at the college level, a head coach at the pro level, and it's going to be really interesting to see how he kind of puppet masters that offense, because the roster I see assembled now doesn't necessarily fit his traditional offenses.
Right. No, it really doesn't. And, he just is coming off this national championship run with Ohio State. Again, like you mentioned, he was there, head coach at Oregon, put some guys in the league, including Marcus Mariota, who was a top pick at the quarterback position, the head coach there in San Francisco, the head coach there in Philadelphia. He's done some really good things as far as offense goes. And I'll tell you, as far as, seeing Chip Kelly's name pop up with the Raiders, I saw a lot of Houston Texans fans mad when they saw that. They thought they were getting them, and instead the Raiders doing. It makes me laugh a little bit, only because so many people just thought that, well, what's Pete Carroll going to bring to the table? He's a 73-year-old head coach. He might be a good head coach. He might be able to provide some foundation, but what is he going to do to add some juice to the Raiders? I think the hiring of Chip Kelly adds some juice.
It's juice, absolutely. Like ingenuity is what I think of when I think of being ahead of the curve, and that's Chip Kelly. I remember watching the first pro game he coached as the head coach of the Eagles. He had Vic, he had Deshaun Jackson, he had LaShawn McCoy, and the first play of the game. I mean, I've never been so enthralled in a football game watching that first half. They just stormed through Washington, my old team, the Redskins, when I played for them, but this was after my time, of course. But yeah, I don't know if I've ever been more actually invested in a game,
right,
for teams that I really didn't necessarily care about. Watching that first half and being just blown away by just how creative and how different. You remember they did no huddle the entire time. They were not even a sugar huddle. They were just boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
And I want to say it was 28-0 within the first 20 minutes of the game. It was absolutely brilliant. And so I think he's ahead of the curve on a lot of different things. I remember him talking about a lot of nutrition and conditioning and sleep, things that were kind of unheard of back, 15, 17 years ago. Not necessarily unheard of, but not talked about, at least when I played, which was right around that time. And so I'm excited to see what he brings. Obviously, for being a first-year head coach or a first-year offensive coordinator with the Buckeyes, and to take them to a national championship, that in itself is impressive. Guys that he didn't recruit, guys that he wasn't familiar with. Will Howard wasn't necessarily his guy, but he made it work. And I'm really excited to see what he can do with the Raiders offense.
Yeah, me too. And again, I mean, when you start to see this coaching staff get put together and you start to see what Pete Carroll's doing, he, as I've been saying many times, has provided us with stability. Just listening to his press conference last Monday, I was like, okay, there's some stability in this organization now with Pete Carroll. John Spytek as the GM. I feel like that they're going to make some really good selections when it comes to the draft, bring some free agents in, and clearly with Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, there's going to be some changes to the roster, right? We know that, but you're seeing how it's put together. Chip Kelly now is the OC. Patrick Graham returns as defensive coordinator. Robbie Leonard is defensive line coach and the run game coordinator. We found that out. Linebacker coach is John Glenn, and we've heard some really good things about what he could bring to the table. And then the special teams coordinator is Tom McMahon. He returns as well. So exactly what Pete Carroll said last Monday when he had his press conference. He said he wants guys that he's worked with, guys that he hasn't worked with, and guys that are on the coaching staff. And that's exactly what he's putting together. So it's official like a referee's whistle. Former Eagles head coach, former Niners coach, former Oregon coach, former Ohio State offensive coordinator Chip Kelly is now the OC of the Silver and Black.